My family excluded me from Christmas at the $8,000 mountain lodge I funded, so I canceled it and watched their idyllic holiday plans unravel. My name is Patrick, I'm 28, and my relationship with my family has always been intricate. To outsiders, we seem like the quintessential suburban household. Dad, always in his polished suits, exuding an air of authority. Mom, the eternal peacemaker, quietly endorsing his every move. My younger sister Vanessa, the family's darling, could cause chaos and still be praised as vibrant rather than irresponsible. Then there's me, the one who worked tirelessly, stayed out of trouble, yet always felt like an outcast. Christmas, for as long as I can recall, has been their stage. Every year followed a familiar script. Vanessa stole the show, Dad spouted cliches about family unity, and Mom busied herself perfecting the facade while overlooking the subtle digs aimed at me. I grew accustomed to the backhanded remarks, the comparisons, and the constant reminders that I didn't quite measure up to Vanessa. But last year, something felt different. I had a stable job, a decent income, and for once, I wanted to contribute to the holiday to feel like more than a spectator in their world. That's how the lodge came about. I found a stunning cabin nestled in the mountains, snow-draped, with a cozy fireplace and expansive windows overlooking the slopes. It was the kind of place you'd see on a postcard. I spent weeks researching, budgeting, and finally securing the booking. $8,000 wasn't cheap, but I thought it was worth it. I hoped this would be the year they'd see how much I cared, maybe even include me in their cherished Christmas tradition. I sent Dad the booking details so he could share the news with his friends. He didn't thank me. He just said, "Fine. It's the least you could do." I brushed it off at the time. That was just Dad, never acknowledging my efforts, never outright refusing. But as December neared, the cracks started showing. Vanessa began acting like the lodge was her project, as if I'd booked it for her glory. She even posted on social media, gushing, "So excited for our family Christmas at the lodge Dad reserved." That hurt. My name wasn't even mentioned. When I asked her why she framed it that way, she smirked and said, "Chill, Patrick. Nobody cares who paid for it. It's Dad's idea anyway." That should have been my first red flag. Still, I clung to hope. I thought maybe once we got there, they'd show some appreciation. But everything came crashing down on a random Wednesday evening in early December. I stopped by my parents' house after work to drop off some decorations I'd bought for the lodge. They were in the living room, sipping wine as usual, while Vanessa lounged on the couch, planning her outfits for the trip. I was about to mention the supplies I'd ordered when Dad cut me off. "You're not coming to Christmas this year," he said, as casually as if he were asking me to mow the lawn. I froze, the words not fully sinking in. "What?" I asked, thinking I'd misheard. "You heard me," he said, swirling his glass.
"It's a family-only Christmas.
We don't want any drama.
You can do your own thing."
I let out a nervous laugh, more from shock than humor.
"Family-only? I'm your son."
Vanessa snorted from the couch. "Dad just means it'll be easier without you. Don't make a big deal, Patrick." And Mom, ever the diplomat, gave me a sympathetic glance, like I was a stranger begging for a favor. "Maybe it's for the best, honey.
We just want a peaceful holiday."
I can't fully describe how I felt in that moment. Pain, sure. Betrayal, absolutely. But mostly, it was a sharp clarity, like a veil had lifted, and I saw them for who they really were. 4 years, I'd chased their approval, tried to fit in, and with one sentence, Dad made it clear I never would. I didn't argue or plead. I just nodded, set the box of decorations on the floor, and said, "Okay." They probably thought I'd go home and sulk, but my mind was already racing. I remembered the lodge reservation, booked in my name, paid with my money. As I left their house that night, their smug faces lingering in my mind, I realized something. They thought they had Christmas locked in, that they could erase me like I was nothing. They had no idea what was coming. That night, I sat at my laptop, opened my bank account, and quietly transferred the $8,000 I'd sent Dad back to my account. Then I opened the lodge reservation and with one click, canceled it entirely. No fees, it was early enough. The best part? The booking was listed under Dad's name to make him feel included, but the payment was mine, so the refund went straight to me. I didn't tell them. I went to bed with an odd sense of calm, half expecting the fallout. The next morning, my phone exploded, 31 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and one text from Dad that stopped me cold. It was short and sharp, like he still held all the power. Call me. Now. I didn't. I sipped my coffee and listened to his voicemails, each one angrier than the last. First, confusion. Patrick, there's an error. The lodge booking isn't showing up. Call and fix it. Then annoyance. This isn't a joke. If you're pulling something, undo it now. Finally, rage. You think you're smart? You've humiliated me, Patrick. Fix this. Now. Humiliated. That was his priority. Not that his son was excluded from Christmas. Not the audacity of cutting me out after I paid for everything. No, the real crime was that his friends and extended family would learn the grand lodge trip wasn't happening. His ego was bruised, and in his world, that was unforgivable. Vanessa started texting around noon, her tone sharper than Dad's, dripping with entitlement. Are you seriously doing this to us?
You promised we'd have the lodge for Christmas. I told all my friends, Patrick.
Do you even care what this does to me? I could almost hear her whining through the words. I didn't reply. Silence was stronger than any response I could have sent. That evening, the real drama kicked off. Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced, carrying a casserole, her classic move to soften bad news. She let herself in with a spare key I didn't know she still had. Patrick, she said in that practiced soothing tone, I think we got off on the wrong foot last night. Your father can be blunt, but he didn't mean you weren't welcome. It was just stress talking. I stared at her, genuinely curious. So I'm invited now? Her smile wavered, but she pressed on. Of course. But only if you fix the lodge issue. Your father's reputation is on the line, and so many people are counting on this trip. It'd mean the world if you handled it quietly. The manipulation was blatant. It wasn't about including me, it was about me cleaning up their mess. I asked, and if I don't? She set the casserole on my counter, clasped her hands like she was praying, and sighed. Then you're making things very hard for this family.
Do you really want to ruin Christmas for your sister?
There it was again, Vanessa's happiness above all else. I thought of birthdays when she got lavish gifts while I got practical things like socks or planners. I remembered when she wrecked my car, and my parents told me not to be selfish because she'd been through enough. The pattern was repeating.
My sacrifice, her spotlight.
I didn't give Mom the reaction she wanted. I just said, thanks for the casserole, and showed her to the door. She looked at me with that sad, pitying expression, like I was the problem, and said, your father's very disappointed in you. That night, Vanessa added me to a new group chat she'd created, named Chalet Christmas Glow. The irony was almost too much. She clearly didn't know I'd canceled everything, because her messages were full of excitement about ski outfits, champagne, and Instagram photos by the fireplace. Dad chimed in, I'll handle the wine, don't worry. Mom sent heart emojis. They were acting like I didn't exist, even though I'd made it all possible. Then Vanessa tagged me, Patrick, can you send the updated booking details? Dad needs to confirm dinner reservations. I stared at the message for a long time, tempted to spill the truth right there in the chat, to expose them for the selfish family they were. But something told me it wasn't time yet. Let them dream a little longer. Let them think everything was fine. The longer they stayed comfortable, the sweeter it would be when reality hit. The tension only grew from there. Over the next week, they started dropping hints to extended family, bragging about the lodge trip and suggesting Vanessa was behind it. One of my aunts texted me, confused, saying, your sister said you're not coming this year. That can't be right, can it? When I calmly explained that Dad had uninvited me, she was shocked and said, but you're the one who paid. Word spread. I could feel their perfect facade cracking at the edges. Their texts grew more desperate, more frantic. But nothing prepared me for the night Dad showed up at my door. Not with anger this time, but with something worse, fake warmth. He stood there in his crisp coat, holding a bottle of wine like we were old pals. Patrick, my boy, he said smoothly. We need to talk about this lodge mix-up. I know you're upset, but let's be adults. We can sort this out. That's when I knew they weren't just panicking, they were plotting. Dad didn't come inside right away. He lingered in the doorway, like a salesman who won't leave until you sign the contract. His smile was cold, calculated, the kind I'd seen him use in business deals when I was a kid. The kind that said he was already 10 steps ahead, and I was just a pawn. "Can I come in?" he asked finally. I hesitated but let him in, curiosity winning out. He set the wine on my counter without asking, like he owned the place. We sat across from each other, the silence stretching. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and said, "Look, about what I said the other night, uninvited." That was harsh. I was stressed. You know how it gets. I stayed silent, letting him keep talking. He shifted uncomfortably. "Your sister's been struggling lately. Her job's unstable, she's worried about money, and this lodge trip, it's important for her. She wants to impress her friends, keep up appearances. You get it, right?" There it was, the speech I'd expected. Vanessa's feelings were, as always, the top priority. My role was to fix her life, to make her shine while I stayed in the shadows. Dad cleared his throat and leaned back. "So here's the deal. You rebook the lodge, use your card again, I know you can afford it, and put it in my name so I can handle things properly. In return, we'll talk about giving you a bigger role in family decisions moving forward, since you seem to want that." A bigger role. As if I hadn't been trying to belong my whole life. As if being part of my own family was a prize he could dangle if I paid the price. I kept my voice steady. "So you want me to pay $8,000 again after you said I wasn't invited, just so Vanessa doesn't lose face?" His smile flickered for a split second before snapping back. "It's not about losing face. It's about keeping the family together. You don't want to be the one who ruins Christmas, do you?" I almost laughed. Family togetherness. The phrase sounded ridiculous coming from him. But I stayed quiet, letting the silence grow heavier. Dad hated silence. He always rushed to fill it. And sure enough, he started talking again, his tone sharper now. "If you don't do this, Patrick, you're telling your mother, your sister, and everyone else you don't care about them. And if that's the road you choose," he paused, eyes narrowing, "don't expect us to be there when you need us." That was the betrayal, not just the words, but the coldness behind them, the transactional way he framed it. For him, family wasn't about love or loyalty, it was leverage. I swallowed hard, keeping my emotions in check. "So you're saying you'll cut me off unless I pay again?" Dad leaned back, crossing his arms. "Not a threat, just how the world works. Nothing's free, Patrick." Those words broke something in me. I thought of all the times I'd gone out of my way to help them, the loans I'd given when Dad's investments tanked, the weekends I'd spent fixing things at their house, the patience I'd shown while Vanessa was praised for doing nothing. And here he was, looking me in the eye, saying none of it mattered unless I paid again. I don't know if he saw the shift in my face, but for the first time that night, I think he realized I wasn't going to fold. His fake warmth faded slightly, and he said, "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Patrick." But the betrayal didn't end there. 2 days later, I got a call from my bank. A flagged transaction. Someone had tried to use my account details to make a large purchase. A deposit for a lodge reservation. The name on the booking? My father's. That's when the last thread of trust snapped. When the bank told me about the attempted booking, I didn't feel anger at first, just an empty, hollow sensation, like the ground had vanished beneath me. I'd expected Dad to manipulate me, but I hadn't thought he'd stoop to stealing from me. The bank rep explained that the transaction was flagged because the billing name didn't match the account holder. Otherwise, it might have gone through. I thanked them, hung up, and stared at my phone, stunned. My own father had tried to commit fraud against me. There wasn't even a shred of family loyalty left. For him, this was about winning. If he couldn't control me with words, he'd use my money. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, replaying everything. Vanessa's posts claiming the lodge, Mom's casserole guilt trip, Dad's smug face at my door, and now this. The betrayal was layered heavy, and for the first time, I realized something both terrifying and freeing. I didn't have a family. Not really. The next few days were surreal. Vanessa went all out on social media, painting me as the villain. She posted vague rants about selfish people who ruin everything, and her friends piled on with sympathy. A cousin even messaged me, asking, "Did you really cancel Christmas?" The narrative had shifted. I wasn't just excluded anymore. I was the monster tearing the family apart. Mom sent endless texts, begging me to fix this, saying things like, "Your father's so stressed," and "Vanessa's devastated. You know how much this means to her." Not once did she ask how I was. Not once did she acknowledge what they'd done to T-work. I struggled to focus. I'd sit at my desk, staring at spreadsheets, but my mind kept drifting to Dad's words, "Nothing's free." They echoed like a curse, reminding me that in his world, love had a price tag. My performance dipped, and I stayed late to avoid going home to an empty apartment. Loneliness hit hard. Christmas lights twinkled across the city, couples strolled through decorated streets, kids pressed their noses against shop windows. Everywhere I looked, people were wrapped in warmth and connection. And me? I had a one-bedroom apartment and a pile of unanswered texts reminding me I didn't belong. I'll admit, there was one night I almost caved. I sat with my phone, thumb hovering over Dad's contact, thinking if I just apologized and gave in, I could have my family back. But then I remembered the bank call, the fake booking, and the hollow ache in my chest turned into something else, resolve. That was the turning point. I started small. I collected every piece of evidence I had, emails proving the lodge was booked in my name, the cancellation refund, the bank's fraud alert, Vanessa's posts, Dad's threatening voicemails. I backed it all up. For the first time, I stopped reacting emotionally and started treating it like a strategy game. Every move they made, I countered. On the surface, I stayed calm. I stopped answering calls, ignored their guilt trips, and let them think I was sulking. Meanwhile, I was building something stronger, something they wouldn't see coming. But before I could act, they pushed me even lower. One evening, about a week before Christmas, I came home to find an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a typed letter, cold and formal, signed by Dad. It said I was no longer welcome at family events unless I learned to respect their sacrifices for me. It claimed Vanessa deserved the lodge because she'd shown her loyalty, while I'd only caused conflict and shame. The final line burned into my memory, "Patrick, you're not needed in this family. Consider this your warning." I sat on my apartment floor, letter in hand, staring at the words until they blurred. That was rock bottom, the kind of pain that lodges in your chest and won't budge. But even in that darkness, something shifted. The kid who'd always craved their approval, who'd twisted himself to fit their mold, that kid was gone. What remained was quieter, sharper, more deliberate. I wasn't going to fight for their love anymore. I was going to make them feel what it's like to lose what they thought they controlled. In the quiet of that empty apartment, I started planning. Their words, "You're not needed in this family," didn't break me, they set me free. If I wasn't needed, I owed them nothing. And if I owed them nothing, I could finally live on my own terms. First, I cut off the lifelines I'd been providing. For years, I'd quietly bailed them out, covering Vanessa's overdrafts, paying Dad's bills when his investments failed, picking up groceries or utilities. It was a habit born of guilt and a need to prove I belonged. No more. I changed my bank passwords, canceled Mom's emergency credit card, and redirected my mail to stop their prying. It was like shutting off a series of dripping faucets that had been running for years. Then I turned inward. At work, instead of coasting, I started showing up early, diving into projects I'd avoided. Part of me needed to stay busy, but another part realized every hour I invested in myself was a step away from their influence. My boss noticed within weeks. By the new year, I was in a meeting hearing the words promotion and raise. For the first time, I felt momentum. My bank account grew. I deleted their manipulative texts instead of dwelling on them. I started hitting the gym after work, something I'd put off for years. The weights, the sweat, the slow progress, it became a ritual. My body got stronger, my confidence grew. I wasn't the person clutching that letter on the floor anymore. The change spilled into other areas. I reconnected with old friends I distanced myself from because my family disapproved. Julian, a college friend, ran a small marketing firm and invited me to help with freelance work. What started as a side gig grew into a major income stream. Julian even said, "Man, you've been holding back your talent too long. If your family doesn't value you, others will." Those words stuck. For so long, I'd measured my worth by their standards. But outside their bubble, I was seen, respected, even admired. That's when the real shift began. Remember all the evidence I'd collected? The lodge receipts, Vanessa's posts, the bank fraud alert, Dad's voicemails? I started piecing them together, not out of spite at first, but to confirm I wasn't imagining things. The proof was undeniable. They tried to erase me, lie about me, steal from me. And I had it all documented. The more I looked, the clearer it became. If I wanted justice, it wouldn't come from emotional outbursts. It would take precision, patience, and letting them dig their own grave while I held the spotlight. Meanwhile, life outside their world only got better. Julian introduced me to contacts that opened doors I'd never considered. New contracts, bigger clients, more money than I'd ever earned. I moved into a bigger apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Every night, I'd stand there, wine in hand, watching the lights and thinking, this is mine. Not theirs.
Mine.
It wasn't about wealth or status. It was about building something they couldn't touch, claim, or take away. Each step forward fueled a fire, not of desperation, but of determination. They kept texting, of course. Vanessa tried guilt. You're ruining everything. Why are you doing this to us? Dad sent veiled threats about burning bridges. Mom played the victim, saying, I can't sleep worrying about you. Where those words once cut deep, now they barely grazed me. I didn't respond. Silence was my strongest weapon. Because deep down, I knew something they didn't. They'd already lost their hold on me. And they were about to lose more. Then one afternoon, something changed everything. A discovery that turned my quiet planning into a clear path to retribution. It came on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day that feels routine until something shifts. I was at Julian's office, helping with a client pitch. While he was on a call, I checked my inbox and saw a message from my aunt, the one who'd texted me about the lodge, the only family member who seemed to care. The subject line read, "You need to see this." Attached was a PDF of an email chain between Dad and other relatives. My pulse quickened as I read. Dad had written that Vanessa was funding Christmas this year, that she was stepping up as the responsible one, and that Patrick has chosen not to contribute. He's embarrassed, so don't mention it around him. My stomach churned. Responsible one? Vanessa hadn't paid a dime. Dad was rewriting the story to make me look like a failure, planting the idea that I couldn't afford things, that I was lesser than them. But as sickening as it was, the email was gold. It confirmed what I'd suspected. They weren't just cutting me out, they were erasing me, reshaping the family narrative to paint me as weak, selfish, disposable. Then it hit me. If they wanted to play with stories, I'd make sure the truth was loud, clear, and impossible to twist. The timing was perfect. My promotion had just gone through, tripling my salary. Julian's freelance work was thriving. My savings were healthier than ever. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was in a position of power. Financially stable, professionally respected, socially connected. All things they couldn't touch. That night, I started crafting what I called the reveal. Step 1. Document everything. I organized a folder on my laptop, screenshots of Vanessa's lodge posts, bank statements showing I paid, the cancellation refund, the fraud alert, Dad's email chain. Every lie they told left a trail, and I had it all. Step 2. Find allies. My aunt was already halfway on my side after sending the email. I met her for coffee to test the waters. She admitted she'd always thought my parents favored Vanessa unfairly, but hadn't realized the extent. She said, "Your father's pride is his weakness. Vanessa will do anything to look good." Her words were like markers on a map, vulnerabilities, patterns, places to strike. Step 3. Position myself where they least expected. Instead of hiding, I started attending extended family events, birthdays, casual dinners, anything away from my parents' house. At first, there were whispers, curious glances, and awkwardness from people unsure which story to believe. But I stayed calm, polite, present. I didn't defend myself or mention the lodge. I just let them see me, stable job, new apartment, healthier, happier. Slowly, doubt crept in. People saw Vanessa's bragging didn't match the reality they saw in me. All the while, I was building. Julian connected me with an event planner, and through that contact, I got the idea for the final piece of my plan. If my parents wanted to use family gatherings as their stage, I'd make sure the spotlight was on them when the moment came. Because power isn't always about being the loudest or strongest. Sometimes it's about patience, stepping out of the shadows, gathering evidence, aligning the pieces, and waiting until your opponents are so sure they've won that they don't see the ground crumbling beneath them. By Christmas, my parents thought they'd come out on top. They spent the holidays sulking at home, no lodge, no trip. Yet they told everyone it was my fault, that I'd ruined everything. Vanessa posted photos with friends at a random ski resort, pretending it was the lodge for clout. To the world, they seemed unbothered. But I knew the truth. And I knew what was coming. Because the next step wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about flipping the table, showing everyone that the son they discarded, erased, and tried to steal from wasn't weak. He was the one holding the cards. And the chance to flip the board was closer than they thought. The stage for my retribution fell into place almost too perfectly. My aunt called in late January about a big family gathering for my grandparents' anniversary. It wasn't just cousins and uncles this time. There were aunts, family friends, even some of Dad's business associates.
The exact crowd my parents loved performing for.
The moment I hung up, I knew it was time for the reveal. I spent the next week refining my evidence folder. Every receipt, screenshot, and voicemail was organized into a presentation I could display if needed. But the beauty of my plan was that I didn't need to shout or accuse. I just had to present the truth calmly, deliberately, letting their own words do the damage. At the anniversary dinner, I walked in wearing a sharp suit bought with my promotion bonus, carrying myself with quiet confidence. I wasn't the broken outcast they'd painted me as. I shook hands, smiled, and accepted compliments on how well I was doing. My parents noticed me immediately. Dad tensed, Mom's polite smile faltered, and Vanessa rolled her eyes, like I was crashing her party. I could feel their unease simmering, and it only fueled me. Dinner was served, wine flowed, speeches were made. Then came the casual conversations around the tables. I was ready.